Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Journey with Andrea. I know that it's been quite some time since I've been here, and I apologize for that. Trust me when I say that I'm always thinking about the podcast and how I'm not doing what I set out to do. But things are just so busy, and I must prioritize the things that I work on. I also think something that contributed to that was me kind of boxing myself in with what I'm going to talk about this year. And, as I study things, as I learn things, I get these inspirations and then I want to share them. But then I'm like, oh, I said on the podcast I would only talk about this thing. So it's kind of limited me on what I'm going to share. So that's going to change. We're going to talk about a variety of topics on this podcast. We're going to veer off on some, trails that we see off to the side and kind of go discovering and see what comes up. But I wanted to share with you guys, it's a video or audio in this case on the podcast that I recorded yesterday on Facebook Live. I want to share it with you guys because I want to put it out there for everyone. My Facebook profile is private, not public, and I just want to put this message out there so that it can reach whoever it is that needs it. And so I'm going to share it with you guys. I wanted to do this introduction first because there are things that I mention in the Facebook post that would sound odd if I didn't explain them. So, for example, it is a Facebook post. So I reference it. I was on a Facebook Live and I reference a Facebook post. And obviously, because it was a live, there was video. So there are things that may help you get some context. Before I share the Facebook Live with you, I want to share the post that I reference because the live was really made from that post. I wanted to provide some context for the post that I made because sometimes, a Facebook post just isn't long enough, detailed enough to really capture context, the heart and essence of what you're trying to say. And there's certain topics that are so nuanced that you just can't cover in a Facebook post. And I really feel like this post is one of those things where it is very nuanced and in some ways can be an entire book or entire teaching series. But I wanted to try my best to explain, to kind of put the seeds out there of a revelation that I had that drastically changed my life. So let me read the Facebook post that I made, and then I will follow it up with the Facebook Live. So I wrote, God created us to live in shalom, that's wholeness and peace. We all know that God's creation took a detour by a poor decision by a human. Many of us know that as sin entered the world. God sent his son, that's Jesus, who became human and conquered sin and death through his life to restore everything that was broken, which means Jesus made it possible to live according to his original design of humans living in shalom, again, in wholeness and peace. This is truth. Unfortunately, there are those who believe life is warfare. And I understand why. Sometimes life can feel like a war. Everything feels like a battle. But remember a post I recently made. Reality and truth aren't the same thing. In Hebrews 12, 1 through 2, it says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up, and let us run with endurance the race that God has set before us. We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. Because of the joy awaiting him, he endured the cross, disregarding its shame, and now he is seated in the place of honor beside God's throne. This passage teaches us how to endure and reach the finish line, and that is to keep our eyes on Jesus. How did Jesus endure? He set the joy set before set his eyes on the joy set before him. What did Jesus not do? Complain, stress about his enemies, declare or tell others his struggles every day, act like a victim, constantly speak ill of those who opposed him. Another thing Jesus didn't do was live his life to destroy the enemy. Jesus lived his life to fulfill the will of the Father. There's a huge difference between those two. One involves constant battles, and the other brings fulfillment. If you believe life is war, then guess what you're going to face every day? War. If you believe that God created you to live in shalom, and although it was lost at one point, you believe Jesus restored that, then guess what you experience every day? Wholeness and peace. Shalom. It's not that life will be void of circumstance, but you won't allow reality to overcome truth. You will have peace that surpasses understanding. Jesus said that. That was one of his promises. Since your focus is on the joy set before you and Jesus, you'll always see the joy even in the midst of struggle. But if your eye is set on war, you'll struggle to feel the rest and peace Jesus has promised you because you're set on fighting a battle all the time. Not because you need to, but because you think you have to. Again, it's not that struggle won't happen, but your mindset and belief will dictate whether you live a life of conflict or of peace. I choose to live the Jesus promised life. Will you join me? That's the Facebook post I made that drove the Facebook Live I made. So now I'm going to leave you guys with the audio from that Facebook Live. I pray that it blesses you, that you enjoy it. If it does bless you, I ask that you send it to someone who has been experiencing a hard life, feeling like everything's a warfare. And if you can see the revelation that I'm trying to share, then I just ask that you share this with them. So until next time, be blessed. Hey there, everyone. I wanted to jump on to talk a little bit about a post that I just made. And it's about living a life of war or of peace. And I am someone who intimately knows what it's like to constantly be in battle, to constantly feel like you're in battle, you're fighting. Life is war, right? Like there's people coming at you, the enemy's coming at you, there's always things going on, and you need to fight for ... Okay? I know that life, okay? I know it well. But something changed in me. And this was really when it wasn't even my encounter with God as love, but over the years, I developed this super intimate relationship with Jesus through prayer, but also I really dove into what, academics call theology, which is the nature of God, the study of the nature of God, who God is. And the more I learned about God, the more I learned about Jesus. And the more I learned about Jesus, the more I realized how absolutely incredible his life was. Like what he accomplished, it was just so incredibly extraordinary. And, I grew up in church and I worship Jesus. I've always loved Jesus. I've always evangelized. I've always told people about Jesus. But up until these recent years, I really did not understand the magnitude of who Jesus is and what his life accomplished. And I'm going to go out on a limb to say that I believe that most Christians, and I'll speak for the US more so, I'm not going to speak globally because I don't know what's going on in other countries, but I would go as far to say that most Christians in this country do not understand the depth of what Jesus did for us. I don't believe that most people understand just how incredible and amazing Jesus's life is. Not just his death on the cross, because we always talk about him dying on the cross, but what brought the victory, what conquered sin and death through his death was really his life. Jesus had to have been born. Jesus's life is what gives us what we have today. Jesus died, but he rose again, and he is alive. And it's because of his liveness, it's because of his life that we have what we have today. Now, unfortunately, because so many of us don't understand the depth of what Jesus accomplished, and I'm also going to say that I don't even think that I fully understand it yet. I don't think I will ever fully understand the depth and the layers of what Jesus did. I just know that when I even academically study the life of Jesus, really get to know him both in, through scripture, through study, through scholars and theologians and prayer and soaking and all the things, my love for Jesus has only increased. So a lot of times people say, oh, well, you're just filling your head knowledge, when we're studying the Bible. And I just think that's so foolish, because what I've gained through really seeking the truth and learning from academics has brought me closer to God, closer to Jesus, and really understanding what Jesus accomplished. And what does this have to do with the post that I just made? Because when God created the world, he created humans to live in union with him and to live a life of shalom. He created us to live in this, what some would call perfect. I don't see perfect as flawless. I see perfect as wholeness and peace. That's what he created for human beings. And we all know the story. Humans fell, the world fell, whatever you want to call it. Sin entered the world, and boom, we kind of lost that. There was something missing in Adam and Eve and everyone who came after, and there was a struggle that was happening, and there was a war that was happening, and things were chaotic. But before the foundations of the world, God had already a plan, and that person's name is Jesus. And Jesus came, and he lived, and he died, and he rose again, and he lived again, and he lives till today. He lives till today. And what his life accomplished is the restoration of creation. It's the restoration of the original design. God designed this. Why do we think that Jesus just came to forgive us of our sin and that's it? And that's so, guys, when I tell you that the forgiveness of sins is such a small piece of what Jesus did, some of you will think that's blasphemy, because, we sin, we've all sinned, there are those that are sinners, and you think like, I need that, right? I need forgiveness. Yes, you need forgiveness. I need forgiveness. We need forgiveness of sins, but it's a small piece of this. And Jesus promised us peace that would surpass understanding, unspeakable joy, perfect love that casts out fear, a living hope in this world. These are the things that he promised, yet so many people don't have that in their life. And it's because there's this belief inside of us that we don't really believe that's possible. And I say this because I understand. I admit there was a time I didn't believe it was possible either, because why? Man, life is war. Life is a struggle. Oh, life this, life that. And let me tell you, I speak against cliche sayings all the time, but I also say them because sometimes they're like true. Cliche sayings, they're there because there's like a truth to them, right? Yeah, life is struggle. Yeah, life is hard. Yeah, life happens, right? I say that all the time. Life happens. But you know what? Despite life happening, we have the ability to live in shalom. We have the ability to live a life of wholeness and peace, not just when everything's hunky-dory and things are good, but we can live that life even when hell surrounds us. Even when things are chaotic around us, we have the ability to live this Jesus promised life. Peace, joy, love, and hope every single day. Independent of what's happening around us. So recently I've noticed like my mind has shifted in that way. I've been learning so much about the divine design, I call it. God's original creation, the design of the world, of humanity, understanding that. And I had kind of the depth of what Jesus did. I can't say that I know all of it, but I had a deeper understanding of it. And then pairing it with the divine creation, I realized like, man, Jesus came to give us that so that we would have that. And everyone who lives after Christ should be able to live the original design, independent of circumstance. But life is such a struggle. And last week, I think it was, I made a post about how reality and truth are not the same thing. And sometimes your reality isn't going to match the truth. Truth is what we find in scripture. Truth is God's words. That's truth. That's life. But sometimes our reality doesn't really match that. And what we tend to do, if you don't really understand who God is, so if you don't have a good theological foundation, you don't know who God is, it's very easy to then come to conclusions about who God is through your circumstance and through reality. But sometimes reality doesn't match the truth. There's a problem there. So a lot of us, especially those of us who are Christian, we find that there's struggles, there's war, life is hard. And I hear so many times, I see posts, I talk to a lot of people, and I'm always hearing the word warfare. Warfare. You can't even say the word over and over again, okay? Try saying it. Warfare. It's just hard, okay? Because that shouldn't be life. I'm not saying that there's not going to be times where there's war. Lord knows I'm going through a really tough time now for the last year. But because of the way I see things, I don't feel like I'm living in warfare. I'm just doing what God has called me to do. I'm focused on what God has called me to do. And recently I've heard a lot of people talk about the warfare, and I decided to say yes to God and the warfare followed. And it's kind of like I'm constantly hearing people relate our life to warfare, and that God forbid you choose the right way. That's it. You're going to have struggles. You're going to have warfare. So I know people who sometimes would not say yes to God because they knew it would be followed up by struggle. But would it? Is that what God really wants? Does God really give us things so that we would just live a life of struggle, constantly fighting the opposer? So Hebrews 12:1 is so key in this, and it's just a small passage, but just holds such richness. And I have a whole teaching on this, and I'm going to try to find it, and then I'll put it in the comments for you guys. But Hebrews 12:1-2 says, and this is in the NLT version, therefore, since we're surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses, there's a whole teaching on that, so I'll share that. To the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up, and let us run with endurance the race God has set before us. We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion, who initiates and perfects our faith. Because of the joy awaiting him, he endured the cross, disregarding its shame. Now he is seated in the place of honor beside God's throne. And there's other versions that say Jesus was able to endure the cross because his eyes were on the joy set before him. And this passage is telling us, if you want to endure, if you want to get to the finish line, then you need to keep your eyes on Jesus, right? And what would Jesus do? Another cliche saying, but it's something that I really live by authentically, is like, what would Jesus do? Well, Jesus, to get there, to endure the suffering, he didn't look at the suffering, complain about the suffering, tell everybody about the suffering, talk about how the suffering was his life. No. Jesus had his eye on the joy set before him. That is what he would accomplish, what his life was going to accomplish. That's what empowered him. That's what gave him what he needed to endure the cross. I mean, Paul even talks about how we should live in joy. We should experience joy in trials and suffering. What? How is that even possible? I see so many people living their lives in spiritual warfare, and there is no joy in it. None. I don't see joy. I don't see laughter. I don't see the enjoyment of life. I see suffering. I see struggle. I see strife. And I see it so much more now that I have this understanding. Because, man, it's just not God's design for us. God has shalom for us. He has wholeness. So what I want to share with you guys is this. If you believe life is warfare, guess what you're going to experience every day? Warfare. You're going to see warfare every day. Because you think life is warfare. So every little thing that happens to you is warfare. If you say yes to a calling of God, or you do something good, and some circumstance happens, you're going to look at it as warfare. But is it? Is it warfare? Now, what happens if you look at all things with your eyes set on the joy? Like Jesus did. Jesus didn't complain that he had to go to the cross. Jesus didn't complain about the people coming after him. He didn't have whole sermons based around telling people how awful he was, or how they were, or how persecuted he was. Did you hear Jesus teach constantly on how persecuted? No, he didn't. His whole life, he said over and over again, I live to do the will of my Father. He didn't live to war against the enemy. He didn't live to destroy the enemy. He wasn't constantly thinking about ways to defeat the enemy. He didn't think about, accomplish something and say, hey, take that, devil. Jesus lived to do the will of the Father. Let me tell you something. It may seem small, but it's such a huge mindset. Because when you do something to defeat the devil, where's your focus? Where's your mind? The devil. You're going to see the devil everywhere. You're going to see opposition everywhere. You're going to see persecution everywhere. But when your eye is set on Jesus, you're going to see Jesus everywhere. When your eye is set on the joy, you're going to see joy everywhere. So even when you're going through trials and tribulations, like Paul said, you're going to be able to see the joy. Why? Because that's where your focus is. When you are experiencing struggles, someone's coming at you, someone's attacking you, someone's, persecuting you, you're going to see Jesus in it. Why? Because your eyes are set on Jesus. Where your focus is, that's what you're going to see. And I just don't see anywhere in struggle where in the scriptures where it tells us that our focus needs to be on warfare. If anything, in Psalms 91:1, it tells us to dwell in the shelter of the Most High, to rest in his shadow. Jesus conquered sin and death. It is not our job to go conquer sin and death. Jesus already did it. Our job is to rest. It is shalom in what Jesus did. So I just want to share that with you because I see so many people with this pervasive belief that we're supposed to be in warfare, spiritual warfare. And if you're not experiencing bad things, then you must not be attacking the devil. Listen, bad things are going to happen around us all the time. Sin has entered the world. Jesus conquered it. And those who are in Jesus don't have to be subjected to the sin that's in the world. We can live under, kind of say like it's an umbrella. We live under Jesus. The world around us, though, there's sin. And your family members, your friends, where you work, what you do, the grocery store you go to, the people who are driving around you, not everybody is under that Jesus umbrella. Some people are in the sinful world. And because of that, because you're in the world, you're going to feel the effects of sin. But you can experience the peace and the joy and the hope and the love despite that because you're under the umbrella of Jesus. It's an inside job. The kingdom of heaven is within. So I just want to share that with you, hoping that it reaches at least one person to break you out of that battle mindset, because sometimes we're feeling the struggle because we're fighting battles we're not supposed to fight. We're supposed to rest. And there's a lot of wisdom and there's a lot of nuance around what I'm saying. I understand that. And we could probably be here for an hour to talk about it. But I just wanted to share that little bit to help kind of shift your mindset from life is a struggle, life is war, to you are created to live in peace and shalom, and it's possible through Jesus Christ. And I know you believe it's possible through Jesus Christ. You say you do. I know that inside you do. But we're born for war versus we're born for peace, those two thoughts are in conflict with each other. They don't work with each other. And you need to figure out what you believe. Do you believe you were born to war? Or do you believe you were born to live in peace? Do you believe that if you choose God, you are choosing good? Or do you believe if you choose God, you're doomed for war? Jesus did it already. That mindset, boom, it'll shift. So I have to get off to a meeting, but I just wanted to hop on here and give a little bit more context and clarity of what I just shared on Facebook, because sometimes that Facebook post doesn't really capture nuances. But I just wanted to share that with you guys so that you can be set free from the cycle of struggle and the cycle of warfare, because that is not what God has called you into. God created you to live in shalom, to live in peace. Bye, guys.